Alright guys, how are you? My name's Kyanite and welcome to the long anticipated Understanding Zidane tactical analysis video. Now I've got to hold my hands up and admit that I've had this tactic done before Madrid even beat Juventus and won the Champions League. I've just been ridiculously busy, and in terms of videos, I was mainly kind of focused on trying to win the Premier League with Blackburn. So if you've not seen that and you like Football Manager videos, I strongly recommend you hit the subscribe button and you go onto my channel and check out what's going on in my little makeshift Football Manager world. But those of you guys that are watching this video have probably seen my Understanding Klopp, Understanding Mourinho, Understanding Conte, whatever goddamn tactical videos I've got out there. And finally, the time has come for the one and only Zinedine Zidane. So, what are you waiting for? Let's jump straight in what's going to be a slightly different format to the previous tactical analysis videos, because I want to try and get more information across quicker, because previously most of our tactical analysis videos have ended up being like 40 minutes long, which isn't exactly ideal. First chapter. So 4-2-2, 4-3-3, or 4-1-2-1-2, or a 4-4-2 diamond? That's the question that so many people have been asking throughout this season as to how exactly Real Madrid have approached things tactically, and that's the first thing we're going to address. Second chapter is called Play the Way They Want, and there we're going to take a quick look at exactly how Real Madrid play their football. Third chapter, of course, is going to be exactly how we're going to go about replicating that system in Football Manager 2017, and how we're going to try and port what we've analysed from their play in real life and how we're going to port that to the match engine. And last but not least, we're going to take a look at the results and come to a conclusion. And as always, I think you guys are going to like the results. Right, so this is it. The question that everyone wants answered. Now, the truth is, there isn't an answer for this question. And those of you guys who have seen my previous tactical videos will know that I put a lot of emphasis on adaptation to both your opposition and depending on the players that you have at your disposal, trying to get the best out of them and also trying to exploit opposition weaknesses. And that's exactly what Zinedine Zidane has done at Real Madrid. Now, the foundation formation that they really play, you can probably argue, is closer to a 4-1-2-1-2 or a 4-4-2, traditional 4-4-2. But the fact of the matter is, there's not that much difference between the 4-4-2 on the far left and the 4-1-2-1-2 on the far right. In fact, you can argue, right, that the 4-4-2 on the left is what Real Madrid look like off the ball, and the 4-1-2-1-2 is the exact same formation when Real Madrid are on the ball, because one of the centre mids will basically push forwards to join Benzema and Ronaldo playing up front. Casemiro will drop deeper, and then the wing-backs push on, right? So this is my point in the past where I say, is there really that much difference between a 4-3-3 and a 4-2-3-1? Fact of the matter is, no, there isn't. It just depends how certain players obviously position themselves. But with these better sides, with these better teams, Zinedine Zidane will make small tweaks that might sometimes make it look like more of a flat four in midfield. For example, if they're playing Vasquez, who's really more suited out to kind of run the flanks, which might result in Carvajal or Danilo maybe cutting inside a little bit more, which will make small alterations to the shape. But generally speaking, these players are some of the world's best players. They are given freedom to do whatever they feel is necessary on the pitch to make a difference, which is why people have ended up being confused quite a lot as to what Zidane's exact system is. And the truth is, unlike some managers like a Mourinho, Zidane does actually give a lot of flexibility, a lot of freedom going forward to his players, which kind of reflects him as a player as well. So let's look at this in a little bit more detail and kind of look at scenarios which result in Real Madrid looking like they're playing more of a flat 4-4-2, make them look like they're playing more of a 4-3-3 or 4-2-3-1, or make them look like they're playing more of a diamond in midfield. So here we have what looks like more or less a flat 4-4-2. Ronaldo playing just off Benzema. Ronaldo's been playing a lot more central nowadays. He's very good in the air, very good physically, so if they want to go direct, they can use him that way, as well as Benzema being a very good target man himself. And you look at this kind of average Real Madrid lineup, average in terms of what their main starting lineup really you'd expect to be. Even though it's a 4-4-2, it's not a traditional 4-4-2 in a sense that Modric and Kroos are certainly not wingers. You know, in a more traditional 4-4-2, you'd expect Giggs on one side and Beckham on the other side, for example. And that's because under Zidane, and this has always been the case, particularly this season, the width comes from the wing-backs. And that, of course, means that, well, you're only left with Sergio Ramos and Varane in defence. And if you actually watch Real Madrid, they play with an incredibly high line at times, and sometimes Ramos pushes into the midfield. So it's a very risky style of play, which we'll look at in more detail in a bit. But the question is, what does this look like once the wing-backs bomb forward? And what you'll find is that it looks very different to a traditional 4-4-2, right? But what you notice, which is what I want to focus on, is all you people asking, is it a 4-4-2? Is it a flat 4-4-2? It looks like a flat 4-4-2 off the ball at times. It then looks like it's a diamond. What on earth are Real Madrid doing? And then sometimes it can look like a 4-3-3. This is why. The width comes from wing-backs who are overlapping. Ronaldo can push forward, or he can drop deeper to make it look like Benzema's up front on his own. That can make it maybe resemble a 4-3-3. If Rodriguez and Ronaldo have Modric or Kroos, just push up the field a little bit behind him and have the other one drop back just to protect the back two. It, in a blink of an eye, becomes a 4-2-3-1. It's incredibly versatile. And of course, when the wing backs push forward, Casemiro, who's been so crucial, was so underrated last season, I think. So Casemiro will drop, maybe not as deep to become a third centre-back, but Real Madrid's defensive line ends up being so high anyways that Casemiro just sweeping in front of the front two is so important to prevent counter-attacks. Another thing worth mentioning as well, which again we'll look at in more detail later on, is that Modric and Kroos end up actually playing more holding roles, which gives Real Madrid that really good balance between getting enough wing backs forward, having one runner into the box from midfield, and having still both Benzema and Ronaldo to aim crosses at in the box. What you'll tend to see is, because a lot of Real Madrid's chances actually come through crosses from the wing backs, is that what you end up having is one of the two holding central midfielders actually almost becoming like a winger, a secondary winger, which kind of explains why it was a flat 4-4-2 to begin with when off the ball, because they're really important to help retain possession. So in the scenario where Carvajal finds himself in a 2 versus 1, trying to overlap a opposition fullback to get a ball into the box, it's really helpful that Modric comes to his aid, helps him retain possession, and then they can look to switch play or just hold on to the ball in general if it's not possible to play a cross into the box. And of course, as you guys can see, that 4-4-2 quickly became a diamond. Another example, we're starting off with the 4-4-2, and wing-backs bomb forward. This time, Ronaldo doesn't push up as much. Rodriguez is in his standard position, floating just behind the strikers. And if Real Madrid were to lose the ball, really, in this kind of scenario, because the wing-backs are so forward, it would require defending to come out from Ronaldo himself and from Rodriguez. So when Real Madrid are trying to fight for the ball back, you've got that triangle in midfield. Ronaldo could very well end up tracking back and taking up Marcelo's position on the left-hand side, because Marcelo might not be able to get back in time. Now, Real Madrid are so good in the final third. What they try to do is get the ball into the final third and keep hold of possession. And because Modric and Kroos play as holding players, it's really rare, despite the wing-backs bombing forward, that they do get counter-attacked. But when they do, it can give the illusion that, hold on a second, Ronaldo was playing up front a few minutes ago, and now he's actually tracking back and playing more as a left winger. But this is why they are the best team in Europe. This is why they spend as much money as they do. They have incredibly talented, gifted, intelligent, hard-working players on their side. And when Zidane gives them that freedom, this is what you end up with. And the truth is, a lot of practice goes into what they do, both on and off the ball, on the training ground. And I think, I don't need to tell you how much history has been written in the past 2 years with just this team and Zidane as manager. I think it's an insult to him to try and limit them to one formation, to be honest. And it's an insult to Zidane Last but not least, final scenario I'm going to show you. Once again, this flat 4-4-2 that they look to play a lot of the time when off the ball, unless they're playing against Atletico Madrid or Barcelona, for example, where Ronaldo might seem like he's sat a lot more deeper. As you can see, wing backs bomb forward. In this case, we might end up seeing this in a scenario where it's not enough, right, to have just Casemiro holding in front of the back two. Might be up against a stronger side where one of the two of either Kroos or Modric, or could be Kovacic or whoever's playing at the time, will actually drop deeper to contemplate or compensate for the other centre mid pushing forwards and trying to join the attack. And this could, of course, quickly end up with Ronaldo also trying to get in the box, and it becomes a 4-2-2-2 with wing backs. But the point is, don't try and suss out what formation they play. These formations are all incredibly similar, and these players have so much freedom that there's no point trying to suss out what formation they play. And that's also what makes it so difficult for opposition defenders. But generally speaking, the main reason as to why I wanted to show you guys these three animations is just to kind of get you thinking as to how quickly the three in midfield can just change shape and how that can affect what the rest of the formation looks like, and why it might end up like Real Madrid are playing different formations at different times throughout a game. And this, of course, can be adapted if Zidane spots a weakness, for example, where like the opposition aren't playing a defensive midfielder. It might seem advantageous to try and exploit the room in between the opposition's midfield and defence. And in that kind of scenario, you might end up with what we've got on the screen right now, where someone like a Modric or a Kroos are actually told to bomb forward a little bit more and try and get creative just off the striker, kind of in the role that Ozil plays for Arsenal or played under Mourinho's Real Madrid. Okay, so despite being ridiculed both last season and this season for a ridiculously strong emphasis on crossing, Zidane continues to prove his doubters wrong with world-class centre-backs to prevent counter-attacks, the perfect anchorman in Casemiro to protect him, which is of course something we discussed. Both wing-backs are more than adequate to provide width without the need for specific wide players, wingers, in the side. And just to drop it in there, when it comes to trying out the tactic yourself, if you want to play Gareth Bale at left back, you can do, but I wouldn't, because Marcelo is quality. A lot of people frown upon crossing. We're going through a period in time where people kind of think for some reason that tiki-taka is still the way to go and to play direct football is a bad thing, when in reality it isn't. I mean, Mourinho gets so much stick for playing direct football at Man United, and to be fair, he got it the season he won the Premier League at Chelsea as well, but at the end of the day, he was a Premier League champion, right? So why wouldn't you also want to abuse a crossing game in La Liga when you have players like Ronaldo and Benzema ready to leap in the box? As well, bearing in mind that a lot of the players in La Liga are going to be Spanish, and with all due respect to the Spanish game, Spaniards are a lot more technical and a lot less physical to the English game, for example. So that's certainly something that Zidane knows he can use to his advantage. And last season, of course, Real Madrid winning La Liga, winning the Champions League, they complete the most crosses in La Liga, 225 crosses, which is an unbelievable amount, and they scored the most headed goals in La Liga. And just to put an emphasis on how useful getting crosses into the box was, now this is not even keeping in mind what percentage of their goals came from non-headed goals from crosses, but 28% of their goals, 28, that's over a quarter of their goals, came from headed goals. And to score a headed goal, the ball's got to be whipped into the box, right? So I think that says it all in terms of that statistic. But it just goes to show, if you've got the right personnel, the right players, and the right approach to the game, and a well-drilled tactical approach, which we'll take a look at, which is something Real Madrid obviously work on the training ground, and it's obviously something that, because of their quality, doesn't matter who their opposition is, defenders are always going to struggle against it. You mix that all together and you've got a perfect winning formula. But as well, credit where it's due to Zinedine Zidane. We all know he loves a headbutt. But in terms of realising that he has the players to play like this, and realising how we can get the best out of it, which is slightly different, you know, to previous managers who have had roughly the same mixture of players that he has. Credit where it's due to the Frenchman. So like I said earlier, it doesn't really matter what formation I think they play or you think they play. The fact of the matter is, like most managers, they tweak as they go along. You know, you're not going to line up the same way against Barcelona as you are against Sporting Gijon. And of course, Real Madrid are such a strong side. The players are given so much freedom to manoeuvre that they are always going to score goals. They are always, you know, especially in a league that a lot argue is a 2-3 horse race like La Liga. They are always going to do well naturally, but to really do what they've managed to do in terms of European football and their dominance takes something special, and that's what this team has. What makes them effective tactically is how they tweak and adapt individual roles, which in return makes slight modifications to their shape, and a lot of the time they're aiming to exploit opposition weaknesses, and in return it allows them to play how they want to play, which is trying to aim for a lot of crosses into the box, trying to aim for a lot of possession in the final third until they can find an incisive pass and to score loads of goals after overloading the opposition's final third. Their strength also makes them ridiculously deadly on the counter-attack because of the sheer amount of passing quality they have in the side, in terms of direct passing quality and pace they have on the wing backs. You know, as soon as Real Madrid win that ball back in their half, room like Formula One Schumacher drivers, you know, Marcelo and Carvajal on each of the two wings. And you think when you got Ronaldo and heck, even Benzema comes deep quite a lot, which we'll take a look at in a bit. So much pace that naturally, even if they do, whilst trying to build the ball up into the final third, play somewhat of a short passing game at times, they are able to mix it up. And this is what you get when you pay millions of pounds to build your team. So I mentioned letting Real Madrid play the way they want. The idea is that attackers will drop off the opposition defence, so that can be your Benzema or Ronaldo, who both come deep to receive the ball in the final third, then hold on to possession until your more creative central players like Kroos and Modric arrive. And due to their technical ability, most opposition midfields and defences are forced to try and close them down, because these are the best passers in the world, guys. You let these guys have too much space and they'll just thread it through to Ronaldo or Benzema or Morata or someone, right? And as a defender, it must be hell playing against them, or as a defensive midfielder, because you don't know whether to close them down or give them room. At the same time, you don't want to lose your marker. You know what I mean? A lot of the time against Real Madrid, the opposition become narrow, and that's natural in football. When you're trying to be defensively sound, defensively solid, you'll come narrow. And when that happens, when Real Madrid do have the ball in the final third, when the defences are trying to narrow down the gaps between them to stop Modric and Kroos being able to thread these balls through, that's usually the trigger for an overlapping Marcelo or an overlapping Carvajal on whichever side you want. And the idea then is for one of the holding midfielders in Kroos and Modric, who we've mentioned a few times now, to try and basically play a 1-2 with the wing-back. So wing-back will come, Kroos could pass the ball to the wing-back, 1-2, and before you know it, Kroos plays a through ball into the wing-back. And one of the main reasons why this is so easy for Real Madrid is because, obviously, like I said, the opposition defend pretty narrow. If the opposition try to defend a bit wider, obviously they might be able to stop this a little bit better, but from a defensive perspective it leaves them open in the middle of the park. So from their perspective, they'll say to themselves, look, it's more dangerous to let Real Madrid have the ball in the middle of the park because they're closer to goal, closer to getting a clear shot on goal. It's alright if we force them wide, and that's kind of standard defending really, even though obviously it does open up for potentially having to deal with a cross to come into the box, and defences know that. But there's only so much you can humanly do unless you bring on another 10 players on your team. Kroos or Modric, whenever the ball's in the final third and the wing-back is in a crossing position, because of their holding role, they'll come close to one of the two wing-backs, always as a full-back option, just in case the wing-back has two defenders on him, like a midfielder that's tracked back as well, and can't get a ball into the box. Then Real Madrid would just aim to keep possession in that final third rather than have the wing-back fail really at putting a ball into the box. And of course that extra player always gives an option for a 1-2 of some sort and keeps Real Madrid's options open. Due to when the wing-backs overlap, obviously, even though defences try to defend relatively narrow, when the ball does get out wide, it's inevitable, right, that at least one or two of the defensive players are going to be dragged out wide. And as soon as that happens, well, that makes a lot of room for the central attacking midfielders or one of the two strikers to basically make a cheeky run into, and eventually the defenders are just getting drawn out of position all over the place. And that's one of the perks of how Real Madrid play. They get so many players in that final third that it becomes incredibly difficult for defenders to just basically keep track of everyone. And one of the main reasons why they can make so many runs centrally in the middle of the park is kind of similar to how I play my Blackburn save on my channel, to be honest, is because on top of the central attackers, you now have wing backs who are essentially wingers. So if we're basically talking one of the holding midfielders making himself available on the edge of the box, the striker and the two players behind him in the box, that's three attackers in the box. You've got an overlapping wing back on the other side who's cutting inside, the wing back with the ball, and that other option on the edge of the box. So you're talking 1, 2, 3, 4 on the edge of the box, and the fifth wing back coming in, all ready to receive the ball in and around that final third. And there's only so much opposition defences can do. Just before we take a look at some examples, some more points you should keep in mind with regards to how Real Madrid play. Attack is the best form of defence, and it isn't unusual to see Sergio Ramos and you think this is madness, right? Given how high they play their line and given that they've only sometimes got Casemiro as protection, even though you can argue that Kroos and Modric are protection as well, right? But that's a different story. But yeah, it isn't unusual to see Ramos push into midfield. Sometimes you'll see this a lot watching Real Madrid, and what that then allows is for either Kroos or Modric to also join the cavalry in the box. Like we said earlier, because Madrid flood the final third, teams have to resort to defending narrow because they can't keep up, and basically marked as tight as possible in the middle, and then that causes space to be created for the wing-backs overlapping. The problem with this as well is that, let's say Marcelo and Modric have the ball out on the, or Kroos have the ball out on the left-hand side, most of the opposition defenders and midfielders will be drawn to that left-hand side. Because they're defending so narrow, you'll find a lot of the time that creates a heck of a load of room for the wing-back on the other side to bomb forward into. And if there's one thing Real Madrid have in their team, regardless of whether it's Marcelo or a centre mid or a defensive mid or heck even a centre back, is amazing passers. And it takes basically Real Madrid a blink of an eye to switch play to the other wing, and before you know it, Carvajal has got tons of space on the wing to bomb forward and get in an ideal crossing position, or a switch as it's called. Again, there's not much you can do to defend against it because you're stuck in two worlds. It's like you guys are a defensive unit, you've got to move to where the ball is, but you know you're always going to leave that space on the other side of the park open to be exploited, and unfortunately Real Madrid have the players to exploit it, and well, it feeds right into what they want, a crossing position. Madrid know they can do this on purpose, and due to their quality, teams would rather give up space on the wings than centrally where a shot on goal is more likely. This is why attack is the best form of defence for them. If they can overload enough men into the final third, they will end up scoring more than the opposition. Hence why they've basically scored in every single match that they've played this or last season. It depends whether you want to call it this or last season, the 2016-17 season. Even where they've lost, they've still scored. And the way that they're set up, the way they flood the opposition's final third, means they know going into every game they're guaranteed a goal. This is an example of the switch I was talking about. This is against Barcelona. So the ball was initially with Asensio on the left-hand side of the park. Marcelo was overlapping, and the mass majority of Barcelona's midfield and defence started moving over to the left-hand side. You can see how close Kroos, who's currently playing the pass, swifts towards the wing-back where the ball is. In this case, Marcelo didn't really feel like he could take on Jordi Alba, who was the Barcelona right-back at the time, I believe. So for that reason, he ended up playing it back to Asensio, who passed it to Toni Kroos. And because of the way Barcelona positioned narrowly, because of the sheer number of Real Madrid men both centrally and on this left-hand side, it meant there was tons of room to play a ball into Carvajal, and he actually picks the ball up and tries to play a cross into the box. And of course, as you can probably guess, this leaves the Barcelona defensive midfield baffled, because there's not much they can really do about this. Carvajal is so athletic, is so good on the ball, that he of course retrieves the pass. But the hardest part of this entire move is getting that pass spot on. And if there's anyone you want to play this pass, it's either Modric or Kroos in modern day football, let's be honest. And that's why they fit so well into this system, and credit where it's due to Zidane to noticing that this is something he can definitely exploit, not only noticing the strengths of his wing backs, but also noticing the strengths of his central midfielders. There's another example. So Carvajal, eventually Real Madrid work the ball out on the overlap to the right-hand side. You can see how narrow Valencia have to defend, because at the same time, we've got Benzema, Ronaldo, who are the two strikers for Real Madrid. You've got the other attacking midfielder who's made it 3 into the box. And this is something we discussed earlier. One of the two central midfielders will make himself available on the edge of the box. So we see we've got Valencia players. They don't know whether they've got to, who's marking Modric. You've got Ronaldo and Benzema both heading towards the back post. So you've got the right back who isn't that good in the air for Valencia, and one of the centre backs trying to deal with two of the world's best physical aerial strikers. And of course, you have that extra midfielder who's pushed into the box as well, making a front post run. Valencia don't know where this cross is going. And if you count the players, well, really it's 3 against 3. The Valencia left-back isn't really a threat. The two other players on the edge of the box are too busy trying to make sure Modric doesn't get given the ball. That really, as long as the cross is good, it's just easy for Benzema and Ronaldo to head the ball in at the back post. And that's exactly what happens. Once again, in the same game actually, against Barcelona. This was the Rodriguez goal that I mentioned earlier on. I think Real Madrid were 2-1 down, and then Zidane subbed on James Rodriguez. And one thing James Rodriguez does really, really well is his movement off the ball is amazing. So once again, ball eventually gets worked out wide. Barcelona are caught in this narrow shape. Marcelo picks up the ball on the left with tons of space, and you can see how Cruz, number 8 on the edge of the box, is doing what Modric was doing against Valencia, but also making himself available as a short option for Marcelo. In this case, you've got Ronaldo in the box, and I believe that could be Asensio as well in the box. You can see Piqué does actually end up losing Ronaldo, but it's not the back post this time, it's the front post. You give the ball out wide to Marcelo, one of the best crossers in the game. James Rodriguez, newly subbed on, plenty of energy, is actually, I think it was, that's Jordi Alba. I'm not quite sure why I said it was Jordi Alba playing right back before, but ignore that. I won't bother editing it out. Someone will probably pick me up on the error. But yeah, Jordi Alba doesn't realise that James Rodriguez is making a late run into the box from behind him, because they're basically, you end up with one Barcelona player being dragged out wide to deal with Marcelo. We've got one centre-back who's, God knows what he's doing, and the centre-backs are so occupied, as you can see, with Piqué over Ronaldo and Umtiti with, I think that's Asensio, that it allows James Rodriguez to make a late run from the back post towards the front post. It's a perfect cross, and he makes it 2-2. And you might think of this way of playing as somewhat old-fashioned. I beg to differ. It requires such good understanding from these players, and this comes all from the training ground, to be able to execute moves like this against quality teams like Barcelona with absolute perfection. And credit needs to be given to Real Madrid, I think, for this style of play. But hopefully you can see the similarities and the slight differences between what they did to score the goal against Valencia and what they've done here against Barcelona. And it should give you a rough idea of ideally what they're looking to try and do when these wing backs overlap to provide width. Okay, so here's another example, and it's basically going to be starting from the top left and working its way down. Top left, the person that's circled is Benzema, and you'll see that he actually plays a deep lying forward, and that's why it's crucial that there's a lot of movement between the attacking midfielders and even Benzema as the lone striker himself. This makes them all ridiculously hard to mark, but most importantly, when he comes deep, it means that the opposition back line will probably push forward a little bit more, and that actually creates space, which is very easily exploited by Real Madrid's pace in the middle of the park for through balls to be played into. So, Benzema actually ends up receiving the ball here, heading it down to Cristiano Ronaldo. It eventually gets played wide to the overlapping left back, who I actually think is Carvajal in this case, even though obviously he mainly plays right back, but Marcelo must have been injured. But what you can see, Ronaldo positioning himself on the right-hand side. Danilo, who's playing right back, is going to start bombing forward to actually occupy the left back of the defensive player. And because their right back will then get occupied with Carvajal, who's on the ball. That then basically leaves things more or less in a situation where once Benzema runs forwards, right, because both fullbacks are being occupied and the midfield are being totally caught out of position, you leave Ronaldo occupied with the centre-back, you leave the player next to him, who I think is Rodriguez in this case, occupied with another centre-back. They've both got tons of space to run into, but once Benzema bombs forward, you actually got more Real Madrid players in the middle of the park ready to receive the cross than you do attacking players. And this is a really good example of, with high risk comes high reward. Real Madrid end up bombing with the wing backs forward. They end up leaving themselves slightly exposed at the back. But the idea of trying to drown the opposition defence with so many players in the final third is what makes these crosses, this wide play, work so well for him. And one thing you'll notice as well is that Modric, as the move progresses, ends up being nowhere to be seen, and this is because he holds his position, because he knows that Real Madrid, the move has been executed to perfection. He knows that Benzema will come in and give him that man advantage in the middle of the box, so there's no need for him to take too much of a gamble really and push forward, because to be fair, he knows what's coming. So ball gets picked up on that left hand side exactly as expected. You see the fullback with his hands behind his back. He knows in this position he's doomed. He knows the cross is coming in. Too much time given to Carvajal, who's ready to whip it in, and like most of Real Madrid's crosses, play it to the back post. Either Benzema or Ronaldo are going to be waiting for you. You can see that Rodriguez has actually managed to exploit the space between the right back that's closed down Carvajal, and the centre back has been caught totally out of position, trying to, for some reason, jockey Rodriguez, who's in tons of space. Benzema, you can see him here, excuse the cursor here, rushing as hard as he can, pushing the defender out of the way. He knows a cross is coming into the box and he needs to join Ronaldo in the box to get in on the end of it. But fortunately for Benzema, the cross is pixel perfect, and Ronaldo with a diving header at the back post. Centre back, number 4, caught completely out of position, can't do much. Right back, out of position because he was basically occupied with Danilo potentially causing problems that basically allowed Ronaldo to execute his run into this space and eventually got in on the end of it. Very simple football, but an absolute joy to behold. And even though it looks like it's simple, it's an art. You need intelligent players. The movement off the ball from so many of these players is really what makes this an absolute nightmare to defend against. At the same time, it's about finding that right balance. It's about playing as a team. You know, you might look at Carvajal and be like, fair play, he's played the cross into the box. But at the same time, even though Rodriguez doesn't really play much in this entire move, just the fact that he can make that run into the space and occupy number 4, the centre-back, to have to keep an eye on him, makes Ronaldo's life easier at the back post. Once again, another example. Again, a lot of these crosses aimed straight to the back post. You can see the attacking midfielder getting ready to make a run in at the front post potentially as well. In this case, I think that's Vasquez, who's more of a winger playing on the right-hand side, so it's quite clear that Danilo in this case was told, play as an IFB, really, or IWB, as an inverted wing back, and let Vasquez actually use and burn off his pace and take on the opposition fullback and get some balls into the box. Once again, the ball's floated towards a back post, and you can see how narrow the defence is. They get caught out of position trying to close down the ball, and it just creates loads and loads of room for 2 Real Madrid players to exploit the back post, and then they head home. And it really is that simple as to their approach to the game. Now, I'm not saying all their goals come from this approach. This is the ultimate goal for them once they get the ball in the final third, to eventually play a ball into the box. But they will score, and they have scored a lot of goals thanks to shots from outside the box, which really is a given when you've got players like Ronaldo, players like Modric, players like Kroos, who are that technically gifted. They've scored a lot of goals from set pieces, and you'll get this with the tactic as well, particularly goals from outside the box from the 2 box-to-box midfielders. You'll get a nice variety of goals the same way Real Madrid do in real life, but ultimately, going forward, a lot of emphasis is put on wing-backs where possible and getting that ball into the box, which will always cause defenders tons of problems. So, how did we do? We finished top of La Liga. Surprise, surprise. But we basically only lost 2 games, scored 87 goals, which is a whopping 16 more than Barcelona, and only conceded 15 goals all season. So not only were we scoring for fun, but we barely conceded as well. We accumulated 94 points, and of course, as always, the download link is in the description. So, yeah, see you later, Barcelona. They almost actually finished third if it weren't for goal difference, where Bilbao actually finished on 76 points as well. But as you can probably guess, the reason why Barcelona didn't do too well is because they couldn't beat us. That's right, we scored 5 goals past them 2 times when we played them. We beat them 5-1 at the Bernabeu, Karim Benzema scoring 4 goals, Gareth Bale grabbing a goal as well. We of course beat Sevilla 7-0 in the Europa Super Cup, and yeah, well, we kind of thrashed Barcelona again 5-0 in the Spanish Cup semi-final second leg, which we won 6-2 on aggregate. In terms of goals being scored, Ronaldo got 30, Morata got 25, Benzema got 25, and both Morata and Benzema were being rotated around quite a lot. Assist-wise, Carvajal with 16, Marcelo with 15, and it just goes to show how many of these crosses into the boxes will, in fact, result in goals. And, yeah, you also get your more central players like your Modric's, your Rodriguez's, and your Cruz's contributing with both goals and assists as well, as you'd expect. To be fair, it really is a joy to watch. You will score a lot of goals, but you'd probably expect to be able to do that with Real Madrid. But I think putting 5 past Barcelona really does emphasise that this is something special. Okay, formation and player roles, and this is going back to the discussion of what formation do they play. And like I said, it depends on opposition and fluidity and so on. But what I found was that this approach gives you a very nice balance in terms of a plug-and-play perspective that most people, let's be honest, want in Football Manager. Most of you guys watching probably can't be bothered tweaking much, which is fine. And whenever I recreate these tactics and test them, I always test them purely plug-and-play and don't really do transfers or take the saves seriously whatsoever. So if we can get that many points without me taking it seriously, imagine what you can achieve, you know, by actually managing your team. So we've got 2 complete wing backs, and obviously traditionally on Football Manager this kind of is a recipe for disaster, which is why you can't really download this tactic and hope Hartlepool United or someone like that or Fleetwood will win the Premier League with it. It's made for Real Madrid players. It's made to recreate Zidane's system in real life, and with the right players it will work wonders. So CWB is kind of self-explanatory really. You want them going forward whatever opportunity they have. The wide areas are basically theirs. We've got the ball winning midfielder in Casemiro, so important in terms of counter-attacking as well, that he does step into midfield when he can, whilst trying to find a balance with protecting the back too. If he can win the ball back, if he can step into midfield and win headers, it'll help Real Madrid counter-attacking. Modric and Cruz, both box-to-box midfielders. They'll be required to do defending. They'll be required to go forward as well. And the box-to-box midfielder role, it basically sums them up. Neither of them are playmakers in a sense that they're too static. They've pretty much got it all. And the box-to-box midfielder role for me represents midfielders who genuinely do have it all. They're good at defending. They're good at going forwards, and that's most certainly what both these players are. Next up, this is where it gets interesting. So we have an attacking midfielder on support, who is your Isco or your Rodriguez, for example. This guy is what sometimes gives the illusion of the formation looking like a diamond, because the guy next to him, or a shadow striker, in this case attacking midfielder, who's Ronaldo, who's on a much more positive mentality in terms of him being attacking, a lot of the time will push forward and look like a second striker. Simultaneously, because he's an attacking midfielder, because of the mentality we play with this tactic, he'll also come deeper sometimes, as opposed to Benzema or Morata up front, and help out defensively and then make it look like it's more of a really normal 4-4-2 or 4-3-3 in midfield. So what you'll find is sometimes it'll look like you're playing with 2 up front, because that left attacking midfielder makes himself available a bit further up the park, leaving the AM on support, playing more as that guy in the hole. And of course, when Benzema makes runs to the right, it looks like a diamond. And sometimes you'll find it looks more like a 4-3-3. Team instructions, fluid team shape, much higher tempo, balanced width, slightly higher defensive line. This is something you can change based on the opposition you're playing against. So if you're playing against a team really playing a target man who isn't that fast, you can feel free to turn on the offside trap and push your defensive line further up like Real Madrid might do against weaker opposition in real life. Again, just a small part of micromanagement. And of course, when you push up that defensive line, you help yourself going forward, really. Obviously, you leave yourself slightly more vulnerable at the back, but if your opposition don't have pacey wingers and strikers, that's not really a problem for you. Constrict the space, hold on to the ball better in the final third, which is where Real Madrid won it. And yeah, closing down is on more. We're going to try and use tighter marking off the ball, play out of defence, pass into space. We're not going to look to try and really exploit the right, left, or the middle. Again, we're going to give the players a more expressive creative freedom, and sometimes when you tell them to exploit a certain area, you're not really giving them that freedom, and it's important not to overcomplicate it in Football Manager. When you've got players as good as the Real Madrid players, a lot of the time you'll find that they deliver on their own. Passing directness is going to be mixed with retained possession on, so when you look at that bar, it looks like it's got no directness about it whatsoever. That's obviously due to the defensive mentality, which we'll discuss in a second. But you will still find when the opportunity arises, because of the higher tempo, like a counter-attacking opportunity, your team honestly won't shy away from playing more direct balls. And that's because you have given them more creative freedom. It's because you have players like Modric and Kroos who, on their own, will play nice direct balls, or even Casemiro at times, to try and trigger counter-attacks. We are, of course, going to look for the overlap. That's basically a given because we've got the complete wing-backs playing freedom of movement, roam from positions. That's really what gives you that really nice fluid movement, with the striker and the players playing just off him and behind him, that causes defences all sorts of problems, and work the ball into the box contributes with that as well. And the reason why we're defensive is actually to get the right balance, but most importantly to get Modric and Kroos, for me, not making too many late runs into the box. So when you have an attacking mentality in a box-to-box midfielder, you'll find that he'll make runs into the box quite a lot. And in our case, we want them to really stay back more as holding players, but at the same time to still have optional freedom going forward and really play as a box-to-box. And really choosing a central midfielder on defend isn't the solution for me, because it limits what they do from a both a physical perspective and a technical perspective in terms of when going forward and having the freedom to play the types of passes that they want to play. So with a defensive mentality, you still get the perks of the guys up front, you still get the wing-backs going forwards, and because Real Madrid are so good, right, a defensive mentality doesn't hurt them, but it actually keeps the box-to-box midfielders at bay, and a lot of the time you'll find that because of the defensive mentality, they won't make late runs into the box because you already have your third attacking midfielder, another wing-back, doing that, that they'll come close to the wing-back and provide that extra passing option, and it helps you retain possession in that final third as well. So it just basically ensures that your players don't overcommit too much when they don't need to. And the truth is, due to the formation, you don't need them central midfielder players to overcommit, like we saw from Modric in one of the examples earlier on. And I found that a defensive mentality, other than helping you not concede too many goals, it does really contribute with this regard. And I think in Football Manager, a lot of people don't exactly understand what contain, what defensive, what counter are, for example. So really, contain, defensive, counter, whatever, if you choose counter, doesn't mean that you're going to look to play on the counter-attack and only the counter-attack. They're almost like measures of risk, right? And that influences how expressive individual players become. So hopefully that's clear as to why we are on a defensive mentality. But the truth is, you've seen how many goals we've scored. You've seen how good our defence is. Don't be put off the fact that the mentality is defensive. It's just to find a right balance. And of course, what a defensive mentality also helps us with, it ensures that our CWBs, even though they're on attacking and they contribute a lot going forward, because the defensive mentality is on, it ensures they still do their defensive duties as well. And it ensures that the deep line forward on support in Benzema and the attacking midfielder on attack in Ronaldo also track back as well and provide a lot of legwork off the ball, which is exactly what they do in real life. So again, don't be put off by the fact that it says defensive. Player instructions: goalkeeper, none. Wing backs, none. Centre backs, none. Ball winning midfielder, mark tighter. Box to boxes, move into channels. Attacking midfielder, roam from position and get further forward. That applies to both attacking midfielders, but because one's on attack, you'll find that he does sometimes venture forward a little bit more, which is what we want from Ronaldo, and your deep line forward has none. And as always, instructions are tailored towards specific Madrid players, no plug and play. And the reason why we have moving to channels on the BBMs and roam from position and get further forward on the AMs. Moving to channels from BBMs helps them, really encourages them to find pockets of space in which they can operate, which is what you want from players like Kroos and Modric, and a defensive mentality still keeps them at bay without bombing forward too much, which means that as well as Casemiro protecting Ramos and Varane, they also provide some protection, which is why you don't concede goals, which is why, even though your wing-backs are going forward, you don't get counter-attacked. And your attacking midfielders, they of course have to roam from position, get further forward. The get further forward should be self-explanatory. It's what gets you them 3 men in the box, roaming from position. Just make sure they find pockets of space, and when you mix that with get further forward, you get a very, very good mimic in terms of getting balls into the box, where Ronaldo and Benzema will make runs, or Ronaldo and Morata, for example, will make runs to the back post, and your other one on support will make a run to the front post, or vice versa, depending what side the cross is coming in from. Opposition instructions, none. And here are our results. Now, of course, it was on the 17.3.1 match engine. Now, we do have the odd loss here and there. We did lose 2-1 to Barcelona in the first leg of the Spanish Cup semi-final, but we obviously beat them 5-0 in the second leg, so I think that puts that one to bed. You can see there's a lot of high-scoring games, so we beat Sporting Gijón 5-0, put 4 past Eibar, 4 past Real Sociedad, 6 past Hercules. We were scoring goals for fun, really. 4 goals past Sporting Lisbon in Champions League, 4 past Villarreal, 3 past Bilbao, 2-0 win against Spurs. 7-0, of course, that you already know about against Sevilla, 4 against Deportivo La Coruña. So you will score goals. You will be leaky at the back, that's expected, but again, we only conceded 15 goals all season, so it depends how you define leaky. I'd say the main disappointment was beating Juventus 1-0 away from home, at the Santiago Bernabéu, and then losing 6-0 away from home. Now, it's kind of ironic, obviously, because Real Madrid beat Juventus in the Champions League final in real life. But those of you guys that have seen my Klopp tactical video will know that we also, I think, got beat 5-0 despite winning the Premier League and every single cup with that tactic, I think it was, by a team at one point. And it's just a byproduct at times because of how I test these tactics. I test them quite plug-and-play intensive. I'll just put the game on key and move the speed forwards and not really micromanage my team. So sometimes all it can take is a player to walk in because you were holidaying between games and be like, I'm not happy at the club selling me, which is something we had with Casemiro until we gave him a 300k a week contract. But I just wanted to shut him up because it's just a test, right? So all I'm saying is you'll get the results, right? But when it's a proper save and you micromanage and you make substitutions correctly and you try to exploit opposition weaknesses, that's when you really get the best out of tactics like this. And I didn't do that against Juventus. I just went straight in playing and attacking, which is probably a bad idea to treat Juventus the exact same way I treated every other team in La Liga. But then again, it worked fine when we beat Barcelona, put 5 past them twice this season and 7 past Sevilla, you know. So it happens, it's Football Manager. But other than the Champions League, we basically won everything. So player results, obviously you've seen some already, a lot of goals, but you'll see that assists are shared out pretty evenly as well. So Bale obviously has a few assists, Isco has some assists, Danilo as well. And it's all about rotation, really, which is something I'll admit I didn't really do too well because I wasn't really managing the save very well. But I was really, really happy to see Ronaldo score 30 goals and 25 goals between both Benzema and Morata. So, very similar to real life. Conclusion, I said that this video is going to kind of be a bit of a new format, but I think it's going to end up being as long as they always are. But that's life. Success. There's no doubt in my mind that this is probably one of the best remakes that we've done so far on this channel. If you've not seen the others, check them out on my channel. Don't forget to hit the like button on this one and subscribe as well. Don't expect plug and play. You probably will get plug and play with Real Madrid with this one. But, you know, if you're a slightly weaker side, be careful. Don't just plug and play and expect wonders. Micromanage your team. Make sure you've got the right types of players in the right positions. And educate yourself. You know, read up further on this topic. All it takes is a quick Google to find some useful articles in terms of Zidane's approach at Real Madrid. Unlike most of my other tactics that kind of have strikerless elements to them, like the 2 attacking midfielders in this case, there's no need for man marking here. We don't want the 2 players that are really the AMA on the left-hand side is more like a second striker, so you want him to be central, and the AMA on the right-hand side is kind of like that man playing just behind them as the Isco, the Ozil, or the Rodriguez, more of an attacking midfielder, and mostly your width defensively and offensively will come from your wing back. So don't try to man mark wide players with your two attacking midfielders. If this makes no sense to you, ignore it, but those of you guys that have seen my previous videos and have seen my man marking tutorial will understand what I'm talking about. Familiarity, go for that first and then do defensive positioning training all season. You're going to score goals with Real Madrid. So against the better side, I think the better approach to take is to just aim to not concede any. But with Real Madrid, it probably doesn't matter what you set your training as, to be honest. And of course, the tactic was created on 17.3.1, that version of the match engine. Absolutely no guarantee that an update might drop tomorrow, upgrade it to 17.4.1 or something, make some match engine changes that this will work just as well. You never know, but that's what you have to deal with when it comes to Football Manager. And as always, obviously, I think we've done Klopp now, we've done Conte, we've done Mourinho's Man United, Pochettino's Spurs. I think this is a bit of a milestone, the 5th Understanding Someone Tactical Analysis video that I've done. So if you enjoyed the video, again, hit the subscribe button, really appreciate it. There are going to be more of these. Let me know in the comments, guys, who you want next. I know Guardiola is a very popular one. Guardiola's Barcelona, so that's something we'll try and look at. It's going to be difficult because we don't really have a Xavi, but we'll see what we can do if that's the one that you guys want. I know some people have asked for Monaco, which will be an interesting one. And I know some people have asked for Mourinho's narrow 4-3-1-2 from his time at Inter with Samuel Eto'o and Milito up front. And that might be an interesting one, actually, because they used to actually play 4-3-3 away from home, where Eto'o used to play out on the wing. And that used to prevent opposition wing-backs bombing forward, because a lot of Italian teams put a lot of emphasis on width coming from wing-backs. But anyways, that's a different story. Feel free to follow me on Twitter. Feel free to follow me on Twitch. It's a platform where some people have been telling me to try and get involved a little bit more on in terms of Football Manager. Whether that's going to happen or not, we'll have to wait and see. But my main platform is YouTube for all my Football Manager stuff. So if you've enjoyed the video, please hit the like button. Please hit the subscribe button. And until next time, thanks for watching.